Every year, over £21 billion is stolen from the UK's public purse. Money that's meant to treat our sick, educate our children and keep us safe. Alongside crack teams of investigators.
This guy's got to be stopped as soon as possible.
She had defrauded the NHS.
We're tracking down the fraudsters, stealing our public money.
This man had effectively treated the NHS like a cash machine.
Locking them up.
They were going to be spending a lot of their time inside a prison cell.
And getting the cash back where it belongs.
We recovered close to £1 million.
She was ordered to pay just under £1.4 million.
I'm after his house, his car and some money.
Just over £23,000 back into the public purse.
Fraud Squad, the hunt is on. Today, a work-shy nurse swindles the NHS out of thousands of pounds.
She'd been making claims that she hadn't been turning up for work.
The boss of a recycling company lies and cheats his way to over £2 million of government cash.
The worst example was a moped that they used, in theory, to carry 33 tonnes of electrical waste.
And a millionaire steals from the public purse to fund his expensive hobby.
He was driven by this desire of driving fast cars.
When you think of a nurse, the words kind and caring spring to mind. However, in our next case, the words couldn't care less are perhaps more fitting. An agency nurse lies about the number of shifts she's worked.
We believe that she has forged signatures and falsified timesheets.
Robbing the NHS for her own gains.
It was looking like it could be £10,000, £15,000.
Newcastle upon Tyne. Fraud specialist manager Ivan Bradshaw receives a call from the NHS Trust staff manager at the Royal Victoria Infirmary.
Good morning, fraud team.
He hears some potentially worrying news about an agency nurse.
OK, cheers, bye. The manager of the staff bank received this timesheet from the agency nurse. What struck him immediately was the fact that there was no ward detailed on there. On this particular timesheet, there's a ward, but there's no ward number. Because there was no ward on there, the manager of the staff bank was very nervous and contacted us because he thought something was wrong. The absence of a ward on the timesheet is a bit of a red flag for the manager of the staff bank.
Ivan immediately sets off for the hospital.
I've been doing fraud work for about 20 years now, initially as a benefit fraud investigator, and then I joined the NHS about 12 years ago.
He meets the manager who has the timesheets.
Initially, we had a look at the timesheets to see exactly what the problem was, and we could see that the discrepancy immediately. Previously, there had been ward numbers on them. The lack of a ward number did sort of raise a few alarm bells with us. So these are the timesheets and the invoices that have been received by the Trust to try and claim the money for the shifts that have been paid for. And what these show are the dates that she has actually claimed the money for us for having worked the shifts, even though we had suspicions that she hadn't.
The agency nurse in question was contracted to work at the hospital from the beginning of January.
As a registered nurse, she was actually expected to attend the Trust and to fulfil duties of a nursing variety on various different wards. She was there to fill the vacancies that we had, so we needed people in to cover absences, sickness, annual leave, that type of thing. She was introduced to the Trust via an agency, and they acted as the go-between between the nurse and the Trust. She's a trusted member of staff, she's a registered nurse, and with that level of trust is certainly something that we expect of all of our employees.
When an agency nurse works at a hospital, they arrive for their shift and clock in. At the end, there's also a procedure for clocking off.
At the end of the shift, she would be expected to complete the timesheet and then pass it over to a senior nurse who would then sign and authorise that timesheet.
The freelance nurse sends these forms to the agency who would pay her. The agency then bills the National Health Service using these timesheets. From these records, the nurse in question appears to have worked quite a few shifts over the last 4 months.
What we found was there was 70-odd timesheets that had actually been completed. And these range from different shifts, from night duties, day duties, weekends, evenings, and the whole range. The timesheets looked completely genuine. They'd all been authorised, they'd all been signed by a nurse in charge. They'd actually been signed by her herself as well. They'd been submitted in the right way. Everything looked entirely normal.
The agency nurse appears to be doing everything by the book. Could this one faulty timesheet omitting the ward name just be an innocent oversight, or is there something more sinister going on? Ivan and his team start by verifying the shifts the agency nurse says she's worked. They begin by collating all her timesheets.
So once we'd actually got hold of all the timesheets, we could actually identify the amount of shift that she'd claimed for. We then had to set about a way of actually verifying whether she had attended. So we then started to gather as much evidence as we could.
Ivan and his team then cross-checked the nurse's shifts against the off-duty sheets.
So the off-duty sheet is a list of like a rota, which would normally actually detail which members of staff are going to be on duty on any particular day. And it showed us when she was meant to be working. She'd been rostered in to work different shifts, but that she hadn't actually been working them for some reason. Maybe she'd called in sick, or she just didn't turn up sometimes. And that in itself obviously gave us more of an indication of that she'd been making claims when maybe she hadn't actually been working. So again, we had more red indicators that there was a problem.
And there are even more discrepancies when Ivan logs into the patient administration system.
And this is something that nursing staff use on a regular basis to make sure that they're dealing with the patients as they should. There was many shifts where she should have been working and she claimed that she had worked, but unfortunately there was no entries on the administration system at all. And that was a clear indicator at that point that maybe there was a problem here.
The agency nurse hasn't written a single thing in any patient records on any night she worked. Alarm bells turn to sirens.
Our perceptions were not particularly positive. It was really looking as if she'd been making claims that she hadn't been turning up for work, and we could see that she'd actually been paid for it, which wasn't good.
Later, the agency nurse's day in court arrives.
But I did notice that she was actually pulling along a small suitcase with her, which would normally give an indication that a custodial sentence is very likely.
Salvaging electrical gadgets is big business, and while most of us do our bit to protect the environment by recycling our old mobile phones, laptops and TVs, there's always someone waiting in the wings, ready to exploit a situation. In this case, a fraudster makes millions lying and cheating about the amount of household waste his company is recycling.
Suddenly they were having a threefold increase, and that was difficult to believe.
Hot on the heels of this salvage scammer is Dr. Paul Salter, Senior Crime Officer at the Environment Agency. With 29 years' experience working in enforcement, he's ready to clean up.
As soon as we were seeing these patterns in the collections, we thought we have records that are false.
Leeds, Yorkshire. TLC Recycling Limited, a small company with a staff of 15, specialise in recycling domestic electrical goods, things like televisions, hair straighteners and kettles.
The way the company worked was that they would select an area, they would leaflet that area, and then 3 days later, they would send a van around and people would put out their electrical waste and their employees would then pick up that and put it into a vehicle and take it away for recycling. All done for free.
Free to the consumer, that is. But for the recycling companies, it's a very lucrative business.
Each electrical manufacturer, producer, is as obligated to recycle the amount of electrical goods that they put onto the market. So if you make televisions and you sell 100 tons of televisions, then you're responsible for recycling the equivalent of 100 tons of televisions.
The manufacturers don't dispose of the goods themselves. Companies like TLC Recycling collect the items and get paid via government-backed recycling schemes. TLC Recycling claim to be recycling nearly 20,000 tonnes of household electrical waste a year. That's the equivalent of recycling 65 jumbo jets. That's a heck of a lot of TV sets and a heck of a lot of dosh fraudulently claimed. Suspicions are raised.
Having received information from our officers who were conducting audits of TLC Recycling, as well as information from other sources, we obtained a search warrant and headed towards TLC's premises in order to conduct a formal search. The objective was to obtain evidence that we thought would support the allegations that they were falsifying their collection records of electrical waste.
And as soon as Paul and his team arrive at TLC's depot, it becomes obvious that the numbers just don't stack up.
When we came here, a couple of officers went into the yard area down the back there and inside the building to look for the waste that they were stored. There was some waste there, but nothing like the quantity that we're expecting to find. Given what the company were claiming to be processing per day and the amount that we were seeing, the two things didn't match up at all. We immediately said something was wrong somewhere.
The depot is searched and 49,000 collection records are seized and taken back to the Environment Agency for analysis. Immediately, Paul smells a rat.
And this is the records for February 2011, and it is a record of the collections that has been made. And it records the date of the collection, the address that it's collected from. And we can see on this first page is they're collecting from somewhere called Allardyce Street in AB 39. And then it goes to Taylor Street, and then Bridge Street, Christie Street, and so forth. In fact, all the collections for this month are from addresses ending in the word street. And that just seems very, very unlikely.
In February, the company only collect from roads ending in lane, and in March, they only collect from drives.
As soon as we were seeing these patterns in the collections, we thought we have records that are false and that we actually had a case of fraud that was going on.
Shockingly, a third of these addresses being claimed against are false. But the company doesn't stop there.
They would get a copy of an A to Z page. They'd highlighted the various streets that they were collecting from in yellow. That was all fine. But as we looked closer, we found that they'd also highlighted streams where they claimed to have collected electrical waste from. And it certainly struck us as odd that they would be claiming to have collected electrical waste from a watercourse. As soon as we were seeing these patterns in the collections, we thought we have records that are false and that we actually had a case of fraud that was going on.
But it's not just the number of collections that are being fabricated. The company is hugely exaggerating how much waste they're collecting, and more collections means more money.
When companies record the electrical waste that they are recycling, they record the weights of each item. And what we saw was that for smaller electrical items, they were always the same weight, and those weights were unbelievably high. I recall that hair straighteners were all recorded as being weighing 1 kilogram, which is a standard bag of sugar. Now that is way beyond what a hair straightener's really weigh. Kettles were 4 kilograms. Now kettles don't weigh 4 kilograms unless they're filled with water, and I don't think people were putting out filled kettles for collection.
TLC get paid per tonne of waste, so if they record things like kettles being heavier than they are, they need fewer items to make up the weight. This falsifying of paperwork enables the company to illegally claim hundreds of thousands of pounds from waste recycling schemes. Dr. Salter and his team continue to dig deeper. And it's not long before there are further revelations. This time about how they move the waste from site to site.
When we looked into the vehicles they were using, they recorded their vehicle registration number. And these are vehicles that are carrying 25, 30, 35 tonnes of electrical waste. The worst example was a moped that they used, in theory, to carry 33 tonnes of electrical waste. And that was used on I think about 45, 50 occasions to transport waste between depots. You'd be lucky to carry one fridge on the back of a moped, and if you did, it would probably be illegal anyway. But they were carrying hundreds of televisions and fridges at the same time on the back of the moped. They were using small saloon cars, all kinds of things to carry 30-odd tonnes of waste. Now, clearly they weren't. This paperwork was obviously not real, because nobody in their right mind would attempt to use a small car to transport electrical waste.
The fraudulent claims involving the moped alone would have bagged the company a staggering £150,000. But this is purely a collection service. Dr. Salter wants to find out what's happening to the household waste once it's in their possession.
The waste would go into TLC recycling, and then they would do an initial assessment, and then it would move down the road, because down the road was the premises of Leeds Reuse Centre.
Leeds Reuse Centre is run by Terry Dugbo. He pays TLC Recycling thousands of pounds for the electrical products they collect. Dugbo's company tests the products to see if they can be sold into the second-hand market in the UK and Africa. Any product that can't be sold is dismantled and their parts recycled. Paul and the team start looking into the centre, and it's not long before eyebrows are raised again.
They were processing, retesting a huge number of items per day, and they would have 2 or 3 people doing the testing. And we worked out that the numbers they were recording, they will be testing one item every 2.5 minutes for 10 hours continuously with no breaks. Well, given that each item would take about 30 minutes to test, if you did it properly, that was impossible.
And like TLC Recycling, Leeds Reuse Centre has seen a huge upturn in production, transforming it in less than a year to the UK's 5th largest electrical waste recycling company, earning its owner, Terry Dugbo, over £1 million.
In January, it was something like 150, 180 tonnes. It about trebled through to September. The site was the same, the number of employees was the same, but suddenly they were having a 3-fold increase, and that was difficult to believe.
Later, Paul discovers a common link between Terry Dugbo and both recycling companies.
Mr. Dugbo got up and stormed out of the interview room. And I think his parting remark was, "If you think I've done something wrong, prove it."
Our fraud investigators put in long, painstaking hours, hunting down fraudsters and gathering the evidence needed to secure a conviction. But what do they consider the toughest part of their job?
I think the hardest part of my job is convincing some people that fraud in the NHS actually exists. For a long while, people simply believed that it wouldn't occur in the NHS. The NHS is built on trust, and it has to be built on trust. But we have a difficult challenge in convincing people that a small minority of NHS staff will in fact commit fraud.
Hardest part of my job is finding out who gets justice. We can't investigate every fraud crime. So we have to put our resources where we can get the most justice for the most people. So I have to say no to people who have lost everything, and that's the most difficult part of my job.
I think the hardest part of my job is separating emotion from what we do. Sometimes we see some pretty difficult things to deal with. The fact that people can take advantage of vulnerable people, perhaps some of the most vulnerable people in our community, I think that's a really particularly distasteful thing to have to deal with.
is when you know somebody has, or a fraudster has committed that fraud, and for whatever reason some evidence may not be available, for example CCTV, because it's gone past that date, and due to just that simple thing, the case can't be proceeded with and the decision then is made for that case to be dropped. But however, you know in your heart that that person has committed fraud.
The hardest part of my job, to be honest, is getting up at 5 to 5 in the morning. I live a fair distance from the office, and those late nights and early mornings, they take their toll.
All businesses have legitimate expenses, but a company director thought he could claim whatever he liked to live life in the fast lane at the taxpayer's expense. This millionaire racing driver with a passion for fast cars is about to hit the skids.
The level of expenses that were submitted to HMRC were extortionate. In one case, he had actually bought himself a Lamborghini.
Mick Randall is a champion in international fraud investigation, with over 23 years of experience in the public and private sectors. He's worked all over the world. There is literally nowhere fraudsters can hide from him. And to understand what's going on in the fraudster's mind is Professor David Cantor, world-renowned for his work exploring offender profiling. Hemel Hempstead, Hertfordshire. This is the tale of someone who at first glance is every inch the successful middle-aged man, running a thriving business processing halal poultry, with a hobby that is the stuff of dreams, racing supercars. Over the years, he's blazed round the track at Brands Hatch, competed in the British GT Championships, and frequented world-famous circuits all over Europe. But then his passion begins to overtake him.
He was really more interested in racing fast cars than in halal poultry. And it became really, I think, an addiction that he had to get faster cars.
The poultry company was already on the tax authorities' radar, as they were suspicious it was failing to comply with anti-money laundering regulations.
HMRC would fundamentally be looking at the policies and the procedures in place at the company to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing. And that would include conducting due diligence on the people and businesses that they obtain money from, and also keeping proper records of these transactions.
Investigators start to scrutinise the poultry business and see signs of a potentially even bigger scam. They uncover multiple invoices for large sums of money over a 4-year period. These are all listed as transportation and engineering services to be written off against tax.
A company is allowed to submit to HMRC proper expenses that are incurred running that business. This company was a poultry farm, a slaughterhouse. It certainly would have had operating costs, machinery, the warehousing and transportation costs. However, in this case, the level of expenses that were submitted to HMRC were extortionate.
So the tax authorities go full throttle in their investigation of the company owner, as they now suspect his ill-gotten gains could amount to hundreds of thousands of pounds. Seizing his financial records, it's soon clear that he's falsified many of the invoices. And surprise, surprise, the invoices are actually cover-ups for expensive sports car servicing. The investigators discover the businessman has been asking the service companies to invoice his personal motor racing expenses as business costs.
Many people who don't have a background in criminality drift into crime, particularly crimes like fraud, by finding that there's a loophole that they can get away with. And having discovered that they can get away with it, many criminals begin to believe that It's quite a valid thing to do. It's acceptable. If the institution doesn't catch them, then it's the institution's fault. It's not their fault.
And once this businessman was on the wrong track, he showed little sign of coming off, continually increasing the amount of false expenses claims.
He was driven by this desire to enjoy the risks of driving fast cars. So he enjoyed that adrenaline rush. And the chances are that he found the same sort of excitement in passing these fraudulent expenses through his business account.
His craze for car racing is essentially being covered by the taxpayer.
Legitimate business expenses can be used to offset your tax bill. However, in this case, he was submitting personal expenditure to fraudulently reduce his own tax bill. In one case, he had actually bought himself a Lamborghini, which was clearly not for a poultry farm.
Fraudsters often believe that if they're defrauding a large, anonymous institution, that really there are no victims, and therefore it's acceptable to do it because nobody's getting hurt. They don't move on from that to understand that they're taking money away from the public purse.
This petrol head's not just burning rubber, he's burning vast sums of cash from the public purse. Over the 4-year period, he's received over £112,000 in VAT repayments and evaded £338,000 in income tax. But now investigators are putting the brakes on him. The businessman is arrested and charged.
With all of the evidence harvested by the HMRC investigators, they were now ready to take the case to court.
I think when he was caught, his main concern would be that he'd lose the opportunity to have his Lamborghini and to do the car racing. His world, his obsession would be pulled from under him, and that would be what he would have the most difficulty dealing with.
With so much damning evidence against him, the businessman pleads guilty at Luton Crown Court in July 2018. He's charged with 2 counts of failing to comply with money laundering regulations and 2 counts of cheating the public revenue. And he starts to pay back the money he stole from the public purse.
Very shortly after the case had concluded, he had been found guilty. He paid back £450,000 within a few days. However, for the investigators in this case, they were looking for more than just paying the money back. This had been money that had been stolen and taken away from doctors and nurses and the public at large. They were looking for a prison sentence.
They also want to send a message to deter others from trying the same. And in December 2018, at the same court, the cheating businessman was ordered to pay legal costs, pay back the remaining £30,000 and sentenced to 3 years and 4 months behind bars. This racing driver was going nowhere fast for quite some time. Now this dodgy director's reached the end of the road, hopefully he'll stick to the straight and narrow in future. An agency nurse is under investigation for potentially falsifying her timesheets.
There was many shifts where she should have been working and she claimed that she had worked, but unfortunately there was no entries on the administration system at all.
And she hasn't just faked a couple of shifts. Specialist fraud manager Ivan Bradshaw calculates that she may have ripped off the already cash-stricken National Health Service for thousands of pounds.
There was a lot of timesheets that had been going through the system, so we had real concerns that this could be quite a significant fraud. It was looking like it could be £10,000, £15,000.
Ivan needs to build a foolproof case against the agency nurse. He must ensure he has concrete evidence proving she didn't work the shifts she's been paid for. Ivan turns his focus to finding out if the agency nurse was even on the hospital grounds at the times she said she was.
So this is a secure entry system where we're getting into secure wards or secure areas of the hospital, and you need a door swipe entry card to get into those areas. When we checked those details, what we found was there were lots of days when she's claimed to have been working, but she hadn't gone into any secure areas. It wasn't necessarily conclusive in itself, but it was helping build quite a strong picture against her. So this is the door entry swipe record, and it shows the times, the dates, and the locations of when the door card was used. When we looked at this, we could see that on some of the dates that she'd actually claimed for, there was no records that she'd actually been through any of the secure doors. So it certainly indicates that she wasn't here.
But the door swipe entry system is not infallible.
People can tailgate, there's ways around it. However, to go through those processes and triangulate all this data, it was really quite compelling evidence against her to show that she wasn't on site on the days that she was claiming.
And as Ivan and the team dig deeper, the case starts to unfold.
We then found that she hadn't actually used it at all from the April all the way through until the end of July. So there was many months when she'd claimed for money that she hadn't actually worked and she hadn't used the system.
So far, there's no evidence to support the agency nurse's claims that she's been on site fulfilling her shifts. Ivan goes to talk to the nurses who supposedly authorised all of her timesheets.
So we arrived here at the Royal Victoria Infirmary, came through this entrance here to go and speak to every single one of the ward sisters who purportedly had signed the timesheets. When we showed them the timesheets with their signatures on it, it was quite resounding. They were quite clear. They weren't genuine signatures. The signatures have been forged. To forge someone's signature is probably one of the worst things you can do. It doesn't just obviously enhance the claim and strengthen the claims that were being made, but it's quite an offensive thing to do to somebody else, to pretend to be them. The nurses were completely shocked. They were just absolutely amazed. They couldn't believe someone would do this. This is somebody that would actually ask to come in and help us out, to deal with the patients. And not only had they not turned up on a lot of occasions, they actually had the cheek to then go through and actually, defraud us by forging the signatures. They were just absolutely gobsmacked.
In total, it was 40 timesheets and 40 forged signatures.
We believe that she's forged signatures and falsified timesheets to claim for shifts that she hadn't worked. We're building a very strong case against this lady.
The case turns into something much more alarming than faking a few extra shifts. The agency nurse has been falsifying documents.
This was a very deliberate, very dishonest attempt to try and defraud us.
While talking to the nurses, Ivan starts to build a picture of this agency nurse's true work ethic. He's told that back in January, a ward sister had refused to give her any more shifts due to her unreliability. It's time to talk to the agency nurse. Accompanied by the police, Ivan goes to pay her a visit.
On the morning, we met up and we visited her home address. It was unannounced, and two officers from the Economic Crime Unit, along with myself, visited. She agreed to let us into the house, and the police officers actually performed a search of the house looking for any additional evidence that may be in there. Things like diaries, calendars, notebooks, anything at all. Anything that may actually show when she was or wasn't working, or if she was doing anything else on any of those particular dates. To be honest, she didn't look very shocked. I think she was really expecting us to come along. At the end of the search, she was asked to attend the police station in a couple of hours' time when she'd be formally interviewed. So we arrived here at Eagle Lane Police Station. When she walked into the interview room, she looked a little bit anxious, and she was certainly emotional. She came in and was very pleasant, very amicable, very amiable, in fact. She gave a full account of what had actually gone on. However, she said she couldn't remember.
The suspect nurse admits to committing fraud over a 4-month period. However, Ivan has evidence to prove it's been going on for a lot longer than that.
She couldn't detail anything about the earlier months when we had a lot of evidence to suggest that she hadn't actually been working. And when we pressed her on that, she became quite upset.
After 8 months of piecing together the puzzle, the agency nurse is summoned to Teesside Crown Court.
On the day of the sentencing, she arrived at court looking very smart, as she always had done previously. But I did notice that she was actually pulling along a small suitcase with her, which would normally give an indication that a custodial sentence is very likely.
She pleads guilty to a charge of fraud by false representation.
She was sentenced to 12 months imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. She had to do 40 hours of unpaid work, and she also had to pay back £15,500.
£15,000 could buy the NHS 100 wheelchairs.
I think it was a fair sentence given the level of deceit and dishonesty that she demonstrated and the fact that she was going to then pay the money back. I think it shows quite a clear message to those who decide to try and commit fraud against the NHS that we won't accept it and we will pursue you as far as we can. This is a clear demonstration of the Trust's robust stance against fraud. We trust our staff, but we on the fraud team protect the wider staff group from those who set out to do wrong.
In Leeds, Dr. Paul Salter, Senior Crime Officer at the Environment Agency, is investigating 2 recycling companies, TLC Recycling Limited.
They were carrying hundreds of televisions and fridges at the same time on the back of the moped.
The other is Leeds Reuse Centre, run by Terry Dugbo.
The site was the same, the number of employees was the same, but suddenly they were having a 3-fold increase, and that was difficult to believe.
The 2 companies work together, one collecting the waste and the other recycling it. Paul and the team start to look into the financial records of both businesses and make a shocking connection.
We obtained financial records for the businesses and then analysed those. And what they showed was quite interesting. TLC Recycling Limited had 3 active bank accounts in which the money circulated between the 3 accounts. But these 2 accounts do nothing other than receive money from the main account and pass it round in a circle back into the main account. Money was then moving to Mr. Dugbo's personal account and then transfers from the TLC recycling account to Mr. Dugbo's Leeds Reuse Centre accounts into another Leeds Reuse Centre account and then back to transferring to Mr. Dugbo's personal account.
Why is Terry Dugbo getting paid from a recycling scheme through TLC? It's becoming apparent that this company is more than just a client of Terry Dugbo. He appears to be directly involved in the running of the business.
We looked at cash machine withdrawals from TLC Recycling's bank account. And what we saw was that there was a large number of cash withdrawals within a mile of Mr. Dugbo's house. The actual named director, who lived elsewhere in Leeds, almost no cash withdrawals near their property.
And in the space of just 12 months, Dugbo has raked in a staggering £2.1 million via TLC Recycling and the Leeds Reuse Centre. The money travels through various business and personal accounts. He is clearly involved with both companies, cashing in twice through a raft of outlandish and fraudulent claims. To try and get to the bottom of what's going on, Paul calls Dugbo in for questioning.
So we invited Mr. Dugbo into an interview, into this room. We got the interview started, we'd gone through the formalities when Mr. Dugbo stood up and said, "If you think I've done something wrong, you prove it," and he stormed out of the room.
Dr. Paul Salter intends to do just that. He goes to speak to one of the directors of TLC Recycling. He's told Dugbo works as a consultant for the company, offering advice on everything from the optimum types of goods to recycle through to the best way to collect it. But when Paul asks to verify this with the other company director, there's a hitch.
We were informed that the other director was in Nigeria for 6 months, and therefore we had to wait for his return to the UK so we could interview him.
While they wait to question the second director, Paul and the team continue their investigations.
Because the TLC recycling operation was nationwide, we had to get statements from customers across the country. We had to visit companies in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, as well as in England.
Back in the office, the paperwork is complete. It reveals some shocking statistics. When they tot up all the false claims that have been made by TLC Recycling and Leeds Reuse Centre, it comes to the staggering sum of £2.1 million. Money that the companies are just not entitled to. With the net closing in, there's just one piece of the jigsaw missing. Solid evidence that Dugbo is involved with TLC Recycling.
One of the documents that we obtained from Companies House that was very useful was the appointment of a director in July 2009. And appointing that director is a signature that purports to belong to another director. That signature is a squiggle at best.
And the squiggle appears to be very familiar to Dr. Salter.
That appeared to us to be the signature of Mr. Terry Dugbo. We had that handwriting analysed, and that indeed confirmed that it was Mr. Dugbo's signature.
This is a huge turning point in the investigation and is the break the team have been waiting for.
The discovery of that signature being false was an important part in tying Mr. Dugbo into this operation, along with the financial records and other bits that indicated that.
Paul believes he now has enough evidence to prosecute Dugbo as the ringleader of the fraud being carried out by both TLC and Leeds Reuse Centre.
So after 24 months investigation and progressing through the court system, we arrived here in May 2016 to present the evidence before a jury against Mr. Dugbo. There was a lot of evidence, and the jury, I had a lot of sympathy with them because there was a lot of work for them to do, a lot of things for them to understand and to follow.
But there's one person who isn't fazed.
Mr. Dugbo was fairly confident in court, actually. He had an explanation for everything. And effectively, he was denying, firstly, there was any fraud going on whatsoever. And secondly, if there was a fraud, he wasn't involved in it. It was nothing to do with him at all.
But the evidence is overwhelming, and Dugbo is found guilty of conspiracy to defraud. He's sentenced to a record-breaking 7 years and 6 months in prison, the longest custodial sentence ever for an environmental crime in the UK.
Anything beyond £1 million is the very top kind of category. And 7.5 years seemed to me to be very fair, given the fact that this was a £2.2 million fraud.
And it doesn't stop there for Dugbo. Through the Proceeds of Crime Act, he will need to repay his ill-gotten gains.
The matter was brought back here at the beginning of this year for a contested POCA hearing. Mr. Dugbo appeared by video link from prison. The conclusion of that hearing was that Mr. Dugbo had to pay back £1.3 million or face a further 8 years imprisonment. He had a stark choice between the two.
As of August 2019, Dugbo has failed to make any repayments towards the £1.3 million order. Therefore, as Dugbo has previous convictions, one for exporting hazardous waste to Nigeria in 2011 and VAT fraud in 2015, he will spend another 9 years and 4 months behind bars unless he pays the money owed.
The conviction we secured against Mr. Dugbo for his operation here demonstrates the Environment Agency's commitment to tackle serious organised waste crime.
This case is a stark reminder that fraudsters like Dugbo steal from us all.
When you buy an electrical good, a television or a fridge or whatever, part of what you pay to the retailer goes towards the cost of recycling that equipment at the end of its life. Therefore, every one of us contributed.